Every single morning, you crack eggs into a pan, and every single morning, you toss the shells straight into the trash. You have been throwing away the single best free fertilizer your tomato plants will ever get. A dozen eggs cost you about $3, and those shells you just dumped are worth more to your garden than a $15 bag of calcium fertilizer from the garden center. That is not an exaggeration. That is what the peer-reviewed science now says. By the end of this video, you will know exactly how to turn that kitchen scrap into a yield-doubling, rot-preventing, nutrition-boosting amendment that outperforms products you have been paying good money for. You will also learn why most people who try eggshells see zero results, because there is one critical preparation step that almost everyone skips, but we will get to that in a moment. First, let us talk about what is actually inside an eggshell, because once you understand the chemistry, you will never look at your breakfast waste the same way again. An eggshell is 95% calcium carbonate. That is the exact same active ingredient found in agricultural lime, the stuff farmers spread across their fields by the ton. But eggshells do not stop there. They also carry trace amounts of magnesium, potassium, iron, and phosphorus, all nutrients your soil wants. Now here is the part that matters for tomatoes specifically. Calcium is the #1 nutrient tomatoes need after the big three of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Calcium builds the cell walls that give your fruit structure. It strengthens stems so they can hold heavy clusters without snapping, and it directly controls fruit quality, meaning how firm, how red, and how long your tomatoes last after you pick them. This is the same compound that farmers pay premium prices for in bagged amendments, and it has been sitting in your kitchen trash can every single morning. Old-timers knew this. Your grandfather knew this. Before the fertilizer industry even existed, every farmstead kitchen in America saved eggshells. They saved them the same way they saved bacon grease, because when resources were scarce, waste simply did not exist. Pre-industrial farmers had no synthetic calcium available to them. Eggshells, bone meal, and wood ash were all they had, and their tomatoes did just fine. Every spring, they would crush those shells and bury a handful under each transplant. It was common sense, not a secret. But then something happened. Chemical fertilizers took over agriculture in the mid-20th century, and suddenly the old practices got laughed off as superstition. Burying eggshells became an old wives' tale. The gardening world moved on to bags and bottles, and the fertilizer industry had absolutely no incentive to tell you that a kitchen scrap could replace their product. It took until the 2020s for university researchers to formally put this to the test, and when they did, the results were stunning. Let us talk about the actual numbers, because this is where the story gets serious. In 2024, a peer-reviewed study called PRANAM-Ca tested eggshell-derived calcium fertilizer on tomato plants under controlled conditions. The treated plants produced 389 grams of fruit per plant. The untreated control group produced 252 grams per plant. That is a 54% yield increase from a material that most people throw in the garbage. But the yield boost was not even the most impressive finding. The same study tracked blossom end rot, that ugly black leathery patch on the bottom of your tomatoes that ruins more homegrown fruit than any pest or disease. In the untreated group, plants averaged 6.2 infected fruits each. In the eggshell-treated group, that number dropped to just 1.2. That is an 81% reduction in the single most frustrating problem home tomato growers face. Think about how many tomatoes you have thrown away because of that dark sunken spot on the bottom. Now imagine eliminating 80% of that problem with something you were already going to throw away. And the research does not stop with one study. A 2025 field trial conducted in the Philippines compared organic calcium sources, including eggshells and snail shells, against synthetic calcium nitrate. The organic calcium not only matched the synthetic version for fruit quality, it actually outperformed it and achieved an economic return of up to 324%. Additional research found that eggshell-treated tomatoes had 45% higher lycopene concentrations and 25% higher carotenoid levels. Lycopene is the antioxidant that gives tomatoes their red color, and it is one of the most studied health protective compounds in the human diet. So not only are you getting more tomatoes with less rot, you are getting redder, more nutritious fruit. These are not anecdotes from a gardening forum. These are controlled experiments published in scientific journals. The old farmers were right, and now we have the data to prove it. But here is the catch, and this is the part that explains why some people try eggshells, see absolutely no results, and then go online to say the whole thing is a myth. The way you prepare the eggshells matters enormously, and most gardeners get it completely wrong. The wrong way is what almost everyone does. You crack your egg, maybe crush the shell half in your hand, and toss it into the garden or the compost bin. Those big jagged pieces look like they are doing something, but they are not. Whole or coarsely crushed eggshell halves take years to break down in the soil. By the time they release meaningful calcium, your tomato season is long over. You might as well be burying small rocks. The right way is to grind them into a fine powder, finer than sand, closer to flour. This is the step that changes everything. A University of Georgia experiment compared 3 different methods of applying eggshells, and the difference was enormous. Eggshell tea, where you soak shells in water and pour the liquid on your plants, added 884 pounds of calcium per acre. That sounds like a lot until you hear the next number. Crumbled shells worked into the soil added 2,127 pounds per acre, but ground eggshell powder added 7,274 pounds of calcium per acre. That is more than 8 times the calcium released compared to the tea method. The surface area of the powder is so much greater that soil acids can break it down fast enough to actually feed your plants during the current growing season. The preparation method is simple, and it takes about 20 minutes. Rinse your shells after cracking to remove any residual egg white. Let them air dry or speed things up by spreading them on a baking sheet and putting them in the oven at 200 degrees Fahrenheit for about 15 minutes. The heat dries them out completely and makes them brittle enough to grind easily. Then dump them into a blender or a coffee grinder and pulse until they become dust. You want the consistency of powdered sugar, not crushed gravel. Store the powder in a mason jar or any sealed container, and you have got a calcium amendment that is more potent than most products sold at garden centers. 1 jar of that powder, made from shells you would have thrown away, is your entire tomato fertility program for the season. Now let us talk about how and when to apply it, because timing matters almost as much as preparation. At planting time, when you dig the hole for your tomato transplant, mix 1 to 2 tablespoons of eggshell powder directly into the soil at the bottom of the hole before you set the plant in. This puts the calcium right in the root zone where the young plant can access it immediately as it establishes. Then, during the growing season, come back with another tablespoon of powder and side dress it around the base of the plant when you see the first flowers appear. This is the critical moment, the calcium demand window. Blossom end rot does not develop because there is no calcium in your soil. It develops because the plant cannot move calcium to the developing fruit fast enough during that intense flowering and fruiting stage. Giving it an extra dose right when demand spikes makes all the difference. There are 2 more things you need to know, and skipping either one will sabotage your results. First, soil pH matters. Eggshells are calcium carbonate, and they break down most effectively in slightly acidic soil with a pH between 6.0 and 6.5, which happens to be the ideal range for tomatoes anyway. If your soil is already alkaline, above 7.0, the decomposition process slows dramatically and the calcium stays locked up in a form your plants cannot use. So before you start, spend $10 on a basic soil test. It takes 5 minutes and saves you from wondering why nothing is working. Second, and this is the hidden cause of blossom end rot that almost nobody talks about, you have to water consistently. Even if your soil is loaded with calcium, the plant moves that calcium through its tissues via water. If you let the soil dry out and then flood it, dry out and flood it, the calcium transport stops and starts erratically, and the developing fruit on the end of the vine pays the price. Blossom end rot is as much a watering problem as it is a calcium problem. Eggshell powder gives you the calcium. Consistent, even moisture lets the plant actually use it. Let us do the math on this, because the economics are almost absurd. The average household goes through about 2 dozen eggs per week. That gives you roughly 24 shells. Over a single month, you accumulate around 100 shells. When ground into powder, that is enough to treat 30 to 50 tomato plants for an entire growing season. You are turning literal garbage into a fertility program that, according to published research, outperforms synthetic alternatives costing $15 to $20 a bag. The cost to you is zero, beyond the eggs you were already buying to eat. So here is where we end up. You started this video throwing eggshells in the trash, And now you know that those shells contain the exact same calcium compound farmers pay premium prices for. You know that peer-reviewed studies show a 54% yield increase and an 81% reduction in blossom end rot. You know that grinding the shells to powder releases 8 times more calcium than any other method. And you know that the old farmers who buried shells under your transplants were not following superstition. They were practicing science that the rest of the world took 100 years to catch up with. The simplest gardening hack you will ever learn is the one you have been throwing in the garbage every morning. Save your eggshells. Dry them, grind them to dust, mix them into your planting holes, and side dress when the flowers show up. Water steadily, and your tomatoes will respond with more fruit, less rot, and higher nutrition. The science is settled, the method is free, and the shells are already in your kitchen. If you try this in your garden this season, come back and tell us how it went. And if you know someone who has been fighting blossom end rot every summer, send them this video because the answer has been sitting next to their stove this whole time.